Today I want to talk about Neil Young, Ohio. A song he wrote in 1970, just a day or so after a really tragic event at Kent State in 1970 again. And within about a week, 10, 11 days I believe, they had this song written, recorded, and out on the radio. Something that just doesn't happen nowadays, and certainly didn't happen even then. They even did something else that was very socially aware, and that was they had another song on its way to being #1 at the time. Teach Your Children had been released and was climbing the charts, and a band would never release a second single while the first single is still moving up the charts. They felt it was such an important statement to make that this song get out, that they put this in, and it started knocking Teach Your Children off the charts and shot up there by itself. So Graham Nash, who wrote Teach Your Children, I don't think was even remotely bitter about it. I think he felt like it was the right thing to do. Anyway, great example of a song in double drop D tuning. Neil Young plays a lot of things in this, and we're going to look at lots of lessons that have his songs that do this. Down by the River can be done acoustically this way. The Loner, Cinnamon Girl, Don't Let It Bring You Down, just to name the 4 or 5 that pop in my head instantly. But what's really cool about double drop D tuning is that you now can play a D chord by only using 2 fingers, because you're going to leave your first finger off of the top string, the first string. And so you're just going to have your first and third fingers playing the Ds, but the most important thing is now you can hit all 6 strings. And you've got this big old beefy bass supporting a D chord that is generally a not beefy chord. So anyway, so that's what's going on in Ohio, and if you take a look at the music here, it's very simple what's happening. You're really just picking out single notes, starting with the 6th string in the bass, then a hammer-on from G to A, and then a little 4-beat 8th note strumming pattern, followed by 4 quarter notes in the next measure. F, G, C, D, all just picked as downs. Really important that you hit those all as downs, because you want your hand moving at the speed of quarter notes throughout the song. We'll take a look in a minute at the left and right hands, what they do here, and then later on I'll have a little play-along segment of this. But that's what the important thing here is going to be, to keep your hand moving the whole time. So again, walking through that first measure: bass, hammer on, strum. 4 individual bass notes. That's it. Same thing. This time, 1 note shorter. It stops on the C. That's the lick. Very cool. Okay, we have 2 chords. We have a G minor 7, which is played, and again, I'll give you a left-hand close-up of this in just a second, with a full bar at the 3rd and your 3rd and 4th fingers at the 5th and 6th strings at the 5th fret, followed by a C, fingered like a normal C chord, but because of the tuning, it's a C add 9. So that's what's going on there. We've got just the bar chord and a strumming pattern that really lasts for 2 measures. I'll talk about this more in the right hand close-up too, but the important thing about this strumming pattern is that you hit it down hard on the first beat and nothing or very soft things on the second beat. You don't want to hear this. Something more like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Nothing on 2 of the first measure of a chord change. So I think that's all. Oh, and then excuse me. Ow. And then when we get to the D chord, after 4 sets of the G minor 7 and C, we're just pounding away to kind of create a really neat effect. Before we get into, notice the last time I played through it, I also did it with muting the bass strings, something that Neil Young does a lot. We'll look at this more in a later lesson on Cowgirl in the Sand. But the technique there is that right as you hit a bass note, your hand comes in and touches the string right at the saddle. So we'll work on that in a different lesson. All I want you to do is get a little exposed to Ohio here. We'll take a look at what the hands do, and then we'll have a little play-along segment at the end of this. In Ohio, and in a lot of songs, actually, in every song that uses double drop D tuning, there we go with the everything. Okay, In Ohio, let me just get specific. In Ohio, we're going to be playing the D chords with just 2 fingers. I still like to have you finger it like a normal D, rather than any kind of weird configuration with your, so with your first finger on the second fret of the 3rd string, and your 3rd finger on the 3rd fret of the 2nd string, leaving the 1st string open because we've got it tuned down to D. So, this is how we finger the D chord, and then the little run is just played with your 1st and 2nd fingers. We've got a hammer on. First we hit the 6th string open in the bass, but then the hammer on from G to A, then a little bit of strumming, but then your 2nd finger just comes in to play the F to an open G, and then a C and a D. So all the notes are easy to reach. That's all your left hand has to do, and you keep your 3rd finger here the whole time. It never moves when you're on the little run that happens over the D chord. And again, we're calling this a D5 because it does not have a 3rd in it, meaning there's no F or F sharp that makes it sound like either D minor or D major. So that's the fingering we're going to use for all our D chords. There are only 2 other chords in the song. Now because of this tuning, the 6th string can't, it's a G minor chord we're going to go to, but and there's a bunch of different ways you can play it, but the way I like to have people do it for playing Ohio is like this. A bar at the 3rd fret and the 6th string and the 5th string both at the 5th fret. Now with these fingers here, the bar doesn't really have to be across all the strings. You could have it just across 4. I think this is harder for most people to get not a full bar. I think you're in way better shape with a full bar here, and these fingers will land here. That way it's very similar to a normal G minor fingering, which would just be this. So this should be a chord you're pretty familiar with if you're tackling Ohio. You should be able to play a bar chord out of the E shapes. And all you have to do to play what's G minor 7 in Ohio is, instead of these fingers being on the 4th and 5th strings, they're on the 5th and 6th strings. And then we have a C chord that is, we're just going to finger as a normal C. The tuning, and we wouldn't be hitting the 6th string on here, but the tuning would make this end up being a C add 9 because we have an open D in the chord. So that's all that's going on with the left hand in Ohio. We've got G minor and C, add 9, going back to a D, and every time you're strumming, I'll talk about this in the right hand, but every time you're strumming a D chord in double drop D tuning, you want to make sure to hit all 6 strings. Okay, in Ohio, you're going to be using the pick to hit individual strings and then doing a little bit of strumming and keeping a constant down, up, down, up, down, up rhythm going. So we're hitting, it's going to start with, I've got my D5 on with my left hand, and I'm going to hit the 6th string in the bass. Then on the 2nd beat, hammering on, I'm going to hit the 3rd string open, and then hammer on. Then I need a little bit of strumming. This is sometimes this is the hardest thing to do for people, because when you're hitting single notes and you strum, sometimes the strum ends up being kind of tight. You need to be loose with that and take big strokes on really just the highest 3 strings. So that's what we're trying to get in the first measure. In the second measure, all I'm doing is hitting individual notes, and at that point, I might be inclined to anchor again down here. Now, you don't have to. Let's see if I can do it without missing those notes. Okay, but it could really go either way. If you're more comfortable anchoring when you're hitting single notes, in either case, you have to keep your hand moving down and up constantly. Now, again, down on the beats and up on the ands. When it gets to the chords, the main strumming pattern that we want is a down on the first beat and a rest on the second beat of the measure. So we need to hear something like this. Now the second measure didn't have to have that, but it's really important that because of the busyness of all the rest of the song, it's kind of a relief when we hear this. Notice the second beat, I'm always missing the strings, I'm just kind of tapping on the guitar. That would be beat 2 of the first measure of a chord change. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So again, the second measure can be busier, but the first measure needs to have a rest on 2. And now to C. Now after 4 of these, I'll go then to the D5, and we just kind of pound away. Kind of to want to build things up with a lot of strokes in there and then bring it all down for... Oh, this is a good one by the way. I didn't even think about that. This is a good one to work on muting the bass notes as well. So if you want to work on that, go ahead. I'll address that more in a different thing. That's just what I want to get you looking at a little bit of the riff, the way the right hand works in Ohio. So let's give this a try. I've got my metronome here at 120, which is significantly slower than the album. I really think it's important that you practice things slow, get them slow and steady before you worry about speeding them up. So we'll just run through it as long as it's fun. 2, 3, 4. Back to the riff. And if you hit some wrong notes, it doesn't matter. Let's do it again. Back to the chords, the G minor 7. So again, don't worry about the accuracy so much on this. Just get close. It'll sound like the right song. Time through the riff. So, practice playing it at that speed, then crank it up maybe to 130, 140. It's probably not much faster than that. Speed never really matters. But start getting used to those chords in double drop D tuning, and we'll take a look at some of his other tunes later.